Now, there's been much anticipation and excitement for it, and now the moment is almost upon us. This week sees the release of the first Doctor adventures, The Outlaws. Back last year, when we'd just finished recording this brand new box set, I forced poor Stephen Noonan to sit down and chat to me exclusively for this podcast. Given that he was totally exhausted, I think, well, actually, you can't tell. You can't tell. Have a listen. He's great. Hello, Stephen Noonan, and welcome to the Big Finish podcast.
Hello, Nick. How are you?
I'm over here. What have you been...
I didn't say where I am.
I know. But
I know where you are.
That's how I am. What have you been playing for us today?
I've got no short-term memory, I think. What was it? The Doctor.
The first Doctor.
The first Doctor.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
And it's now out this week, I've decided. So...
You recorded it and you're putting it out this week?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay. That was quick.
Yeah. Well, this recording has been frozen in time. Sorry, that's the wrong Doctor. Anyway, in a nutshell, how come you ended up playing the first Doctor?
In a large nutshell,
And make it funny.
Oh. Well, at the end of this, you can say, "What a lovely story." Those who know the power of Crolwell might recognise that from the DVD extras. Anyway, I was given a phone call. I was phoned up by Mark Elstob, who Big Finish fans might know as number 6 from the Prisoner series, amongst many other things. And he said, Nick Briggs is looking for a first Doctor. How would you feel about me putting your name his way, knowing your skills such as they are? And he knew that I'd occasionally been known to start ejaculating as the first Doctor, in the Conan Doyle sense of the word.
Indeed, yes. And perfectly legitimate.
So he'd heard me say things like, "It's far from being all over." I've messed my voice up today, so I can't do it just. Or maybe it sounds better with a hoarser voice. Because I hadn't been doing this sort of thing for a bit, because I'm taking a bit of a break, and I thought, well, can I ring you back tomorrow? So he said yes, and so I did, and I thought, okay, and so I got sent these audition pieces, which were extracts from various Hartnells stories, put them on tape, and then I got an email from Nick Briggs saying, "Oh, there he is," him saying, "Can you do a Zoom chat tomorrow?" And then the things started to unfold.
What a lovely story.
What a lovely story. Yes.
So
that's Glyn Owen, by the way.
Yeah, that's his comment on the Tom Baker anecdote, I believe.
The one about Begonia Pope.
Oh, yes. So you'd already been entertaining Mark Elstob over the years with various bits of William Hartnell, but you'd done all the actory things that actors do, good actors do. You'd been the RSC, and you'd done various television shows.
Played Hamlet.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. Worked with David Warner in David Warner's King Lear.
Yes.
I was Edmund in his King Lear.
There you go, you see. and every now and again you mention, I did a film with so-and-so, I did that series. I think, you've done loads of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So it's going to be an interesting surprise for people. What are your, how would you describe how you capture the kind of first Doctor performance? You've done a lot of research, haven't you? Which is an understatement.
It is really, yeah, because I actually, because I've known about this for a little while, since beginning of summer, really.
Summer 2021, we're probably in 2022
indeed,
now.
That's right, yes. So I offered it at the beginning of July, so known about it a long time. And it was wonderful to have the opportunity to go back and watch all the Hartnell stories over and over again. Not that I haven't in the past, of course, as a Doctor Who fan. And to venture into stories that I'd never got round to, shamefully, a lot of the missing stories. So I'd never listened to the Mythmakers. I'd never listened to the Smugglers. I'm now a huge fan of the Mythmakers and the Smugglers. I'd never listened to all of the Daleks' master plan.
Yeah.
Which sustains
Same here.
Which sustains those 12 episodes brilliantly. So it was an absolute joy to have this opportunity to have a good excuse to be a Doctor Who fan to the nth degree.
Yeah. Have you confessed to anyone yet on tape that, as it were, that you've recorded all those lines yourself?
Now that's a little bit of a fib that I have not got round to record. The plan was.
That's what I've been telling
everyone.
That
was that. Well, okay, we can go with that. Let's cut that bit out then. But I've done a hell of a lot of it.
Yes,
was not just listening to, but deciding to record myself doing every single one of Hartnell's lines. So whereby I'd have it, the audio recording in my headphones with the dictaphone, listen to the line, and then try and mimic it exactly. And with nobody else's lines, if you cut it together, you often get quite a hilarious result, which is just Hartnell's lines. It's a particular sequence in the Daleks' master plan,
yes,
where he's bossing Katerina around on the Devil's Planet, and without being too specific, it becomes a hilarious double entendre. It sounds like it's a Carry On, Doctor.
Oh, right.
That's all I'll say.
Okay, well, we won't go into detail on that.
But no, it's so that's been of inestimable help doing that, and having those recordings and listening back, not just to him but to myself, doing exact lines from most of the stories, so that you go, oh, I've got it there, I haven't got it there, and so you realise where you're stronger, what sort of timbre or particular inflections you've nailed, and other ones where there's more work to be done, or perhaps don't bother with that because he doesn't sound much like himself.
Well, this is the thing we've spoken.
Yes.
You and I have talked a lot, and you've talked a lot about how William Hartnell's voice is very different in different circumstances, and sometimes he does it in a way that people wouldn't necessarily recognise that as a typical Hartnell voice. What are the different kinds of voice he did?
Well, it's very interesting, particularly early on. If you listen to An Unearthly Child or the Daleks, so the very early stories. There's a lot less of the sort of the fussier, sort of doddery old man stuff. It's a much straighter performance, if you know what I mean. It's a much less charactered performance.
Yes. What? Can you give me an example of a sort of?
So if you the first scene in the TARDIS in An Unearthly Child, where he's saying things like that. There's famous lines, obviously, like "illusions indeed." That's that famous speech.
Yeah.
Don't know. There's far less sort of elaboration around what he's doing, and that sort of comes along much more later on.
But he's giving himself thinking time to try and remember the lines, isn't he? Because it's no secret that he did struggle.
There's the very interesting interview with Donald Tosh that a chap called Nick Briggs did in the 90s, and I'd never, because this was an interview I obviously watched for research, and it's a brilliant interview.
Oh, thank you. I have no recollection
I meant that Donald
it.
Tosh was brilliant, but no, he wasn't. It's very good, you know. I'd never heard this theory before. I think I knew that Hartnell had an accident during the filming of Daleks Invasion, but Tosh, his opinion was that was what changed him, and that after that he was the dodderiness became something that he wasn't incorporating into the part deliberately, but he was having to rely on to cover the fact that he wasn't the person he'd been before the accident. And of course we don't know how the condition he had was affecting him, or how it was creeping up on him as those later stories.
But it becomes part of his characterisation, doesn't it? It's an integral part of
What's brilliant about it is that he made those necessities into that he was having. So think about the workload. I mean, it was all the year round.
Yeah.
48 weeks a year or something. He'd had the odd week off.
Yeah.
And with that enormous learning load of all those lines.
I don't think many modern actors could do that.
This was all the year round. There was Doctor Who was on all year, but there was a tiny little break in the summer of a week or two. That's an astonishing amount of work to do, and not in the modern way of rehearse and record. They're continuous record as live. So it's a miracle that he wasn't even more all over the place, or anybody doing that amount of work.
Did you have any sort of go-to phrases that kept sort of inspiring you to hold on to the voice?
What I will say is there were certain stories that were more useful than others as a sort of quarry, and I keep going back to Galaxy 4 for some reason. There's a particular sort of timbre that he has in his voice. There was some lines that amused me in it, and the Daleks' master plan. There's something about that sort of was at the beginning of his third year, talking about the different voices of William Hartnell. A lot of the stuff he does is in that it's very, 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 it's up there, quite feathery light. My voice doesn't naturally go there. My voice is much more sort of abrasive and so I would find myself. I'd listen to a story like the Daleks' master plan. His voice is much more on that sort of harsher level as it is in Galaxy 4. So it was useful to concentrate on those stories and work on my strengths and gradually sort of branch out from the ability to do that to actually then when you found you could do that particularly, you go, oh, I see, I can move from there to where he goes lighter, as he does. So once I've got that, I can do that other voice or that, And
you've done some marvellous set pieces like the whole 1066 thing that you took from the Time Meddler.
There's been nice opportunities in these scripts too, because The Outlaws is a homage, a love letter, if you like, to the Time Meddler, and of course it's a story with the monk, and there are references to their previous main encounter in that story, and there's a way in which Hartnell in that story says the year 1066.
Yes,
and so the word 1066, or the year that was not in the original script of The Outlaws, but I thought it'd be wonderful to incorporate that at the end of a speech he has about the Battle of Hastings, to do that. Do you want me to do it now? I'll let them.
Go on, do a bit.
1066. There you are.
And everyone in the studio was terribly admiring of that. And there are these incredible bits you do, which are just like huge production numbers in themselves. And William Hartnell's performance, actually, once you start analysing it, and I've analysed it nowhere near as much as you, but through you and through talking about it, I've gone back and watched and listened to stuff. It's really dynamic. And by that, I mean it changes in volume and it changes in pitch a lot. So one minute he's and then it's like, no, he suddenly turns on someone. And it's really, I'm finding it mesmerising.
Because today we've just been recording. It's the second day of The Outlaws, and we were focusing on all the scenes with the monk. Because yesterday we had Glynis Barber, so we were doing the scenes with the sheriff of Lincoln, the part she's playing, and today we were focusing on the monk scenes. And so I got up at 5 o'clock this morning to watch The Time Meddler. A sort of special viewing on the day I was going to have to pay tribute to it, and I was just sitting there thinking, well, this. You'd have thought it might have become a chore now, because could you get all Hartnelled out? I was sitting there this morning going, I just think this is terrific. This performance, it's just so wonderfully varied, but not sort of gratuitously varied. It's. I think there's a reason why we're still sitting here talking about Doctor Who. And if he hadn't made it float in the first place, which it was phenomenally successful in the 60s. Obviously, the creatures that the man sitting opposite me personifies, all of them now, had a lot to do with it, but it must have had an enormous amount to do with it. He was loved as Doctor Who, and he refers to himself, that being followed around by children like the Pied Piper, But there's a reason for that, and it is an absolutely terrific performance, and that must never be forgotten, I think, how significant he was and how brilliant he was.
And, really exhausting for you. How are you feeling at the end of it all?
My brain's gone dead is fried by the Hartnell stuff. It's been 2 days now, and also we did. Nick very kindly, I requested that there should be a gap of a week between recording one and the second one, and he kindly, actually at great inconvenience, I think, managed to wangle that. But I'm rather glad he did, because on scene 13 of 41 in The Miniaturist, there was a scene of the Doctor being tortured in ways that actually I can't quite remember exactly, but and I managed to knacker my voice barely halfway through it. So it's been nice to have a week to recuperate to an extent, because it is to do to create that voice.
The voice that when he's going through pain, and it's
like you really have to constrict your vocal cords. If you do that and then shout through it, then you're the recipe for knackering the voice. So it's constantly rebelling. The vocal cords are, the larynx is going, "What are you doing?" all day, And that's obviously sort of a physical thing, but the way these things work, of course, it's recorded very, very quickly, and so actors have to be on it, don't they? Because you pretty much do 2 takes of a scene and some pickups. So you've really got to be concentrating.
Frankly, sometimes we do more, but with you, there's really no need to do more than 2, to be quite frank, because there are no mistakes except the ones you deliberately put in.
Well, that's not entirely true. That's very kind of you, but
there are hardly any. I think on the fingers of one hand, I can think of times when we've had to stop because you actually made a mistake. And actors, myself included, make mistakes all the time. There's no shame in that. But you are exceptionally well prepared. So thank you.
Well, it was one of the inspirations before coming to record this. Just a few weeks ago, I watched. There's this chap called Nick Briggs who interviewed Verity Lambert in the 90s, and a name that will be familiar to Doctor Who fans. This was just after the cancellation, and she talked about. I didn't know this until I'd seen this interview, and I hadn't seen it before, where she said she had been in negotiation with the BBC with her company, Cinema Verity, about possibly rescuing Doctor Who, at that time, and she said, I was quite interested in the idea of doing that. And Nick said to her, "Well, did you have any ideas?" And she said, "Yes, I had some very strong ideas for casting particularly." And he said, "Well, who would you have cast?" And the most interesting suggestion she made was Peter O'Toole. And so I find it very difficult to watch films that haven't got William Hartnell in recently. And I suddenly thought, great, Verity's other choice for Doctor Who that was never realised was Peter O'Toole. So I started watching some Peter O'Toole films just by way of something else to watch. And there was a wonderful commentary he does on the film Beckett, where he talks with the moderator is asking him how he prepares. How would you prepare? He says the only way to prepare for anything, for any actor, is uninhibited, unobserved private study, so that when you get to the set, you get to the rehearsal room, you get to the recording studio, all the work's been done, and so then you can play, inverted commas, whatever. So, and I thought, that's great. I love that. Uninhibited, unobserved private study is the secret to all performance. And you can only make something sound spontaneous unless you're doing improvisation by having rigorously worked on it. Otherwise, it's going to sound a mess. Spontaneity, there is such a thing as spontaneity, but in acting, it tends to the faking of it, or making it sound like it is spontaneous, is by doing the opposite of working very, very hard and specifically.
There's no substitute for homework, is there?
No substitute for homework. No, absolutely.
So, will you be up for more?
Nah, I've had enough of this. I'd love to. Yeah, absolutely. If there's more in the offing, I'd be delighted to. And I have got hours and hours, if not days and days, of dictaphone material, which it would be shame to shelve permanently now. So it'd be nice to utilise it once again.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, we'd love to do that.
All right. Well, that's delightful to hear. Yeah. Thank you very much.
I think it's fair to say that the amount of work Stephen has put into this has been phenomenal, hasn't it?
Absolutely. I was so when I was first told about Stephen's involvement, and you were telling me just the level in which, the detail in which he tries to draw out of his performances and analysing all of, almost chronicling Hartnell's career, as it were,
Yes, yeah.
is just incredible, and that makes such a huge difference. I think when when you know that somebody has gone to that level of detail and research in their performance, I think when you know that, you can relax when listening to something, because you think, it's in really safe hands, and it is when you listen to it. It's just a wonderful curated performance.